It seems to me to be a fairly human trait to want to be taken seriously. Now, that's not to say that we can't enjoy jokes or consider the lighter moments of our lives, our actions, even some of our characteristics as funny, but there is something that really gets to us when we feel that we're being laughed at. Even from a young age, we noticed our son Noah would respond quite dramatically if he mistook our laughter as directed towards him. Occasionally, we've had to use the distinction, an important one. No, son, we aren't laughing at you, we're laughing with you. Today's reading captured a snapshot of the story of Abraham, Sarah, and the promised child Isaac. It is, as a whole story, deeply tied to laughter, laughter at, and laughter with. Abraham and Sarah, they've been unable to conceive, and they are now very old. Like, really old. So there's a tension in the story already. On one hand, there's a sadness and a grief. This couple have been unable to continue their family line. And in the ancient Near East, the hope of life after death, it wasn't really thought about in terms of paradise or heaven or clouds in the sky. Rather, it was thought about in terms of long life flowing through the generations, the fruit of your own long life and marriage. And it's into those kinds of hopes that the promise of God enters. The blessing of long life and fruitful marriage is injected with the hope that in Abraham's blessing there will be a blessing beyond his family, out into the nations. So this is serious stuff. But on the other hand, there's a comedic element. Granted, it's probably not the kind of comedy that you'd see on BBC Two, but even so, it is kind of funny. This aging couple and their geriatric sex doesn't seem to be working. And after nearly 90 years of all that, you'd have thought Sarah would have thought, nope, nothing's worth this. But then there's the actual childbirth. I mean, at 90, frankly, it sounds very dangerous. Even when they take matters into their own hands, Sarah, she sends her husband Abraham off for a late night rendezvous with one of her employees in an attempt to pass off the child from that encounter, Ishmael, as the one promised from God. But it doesn't happen without difficulty or conflict, and it certainly doesn't produce the intended result. So the whole thing is caked in this comedic laughter, laughter at the situation. This is understandable. I mean, face the facts. These guys are really old. Really old. As later generations look back on this episode in their history, St. Paul says as much. He says Abraham faced the facts. He faced the fact that his body was as good as dead. Sometimes we aren't honest about our situations. We don't face the facts. We aren't honest about how tough it is right now. We hold on to a kind of managed naivety, a naive hope that is more like wishful thinking. It's wishful because it's not an honest appraisal of the situation. I've got to say, wishful thinking is not Christian hope. Wishful thinking as an approach doesn't want to enter into the struggle, the grapple, the challenge of thinking the difficult things of life through. A hope that is wishful thinking maintains a superficial view of stuff, and it just repeats the things that we've been taught to say, and at some level, it's a pretense. And maybe we hold on to this because we know deep down that if we were to knock at that door and ask that question, we'd have to reckon with a new set of information that takes us into some unexplored territory. This journey, we fear, might cause us to question our faith, the systems of belief that we've been handed. And so we hold on to that first naivety and just pretend that everything is okay and it will all work out fine. I think this dynamic has been particularly stark during the pandemic. Looking back over 2020, there have been so many examples of when people of faith don't and haven't looked at the situation facing the facts. I've heard all manner of things. People saying stuff like, God will keep me safe, I don't need to wear a mask, or God will take the virus away when he's good and ready. These statements don't seem to face the reality, the facts on the ground. They haven't wrestled and grappled with the difficulties of that pain, the challenge that a pandemic does bring to faith. We have to be honest about life. I mean, in the case of COVID, people have suffered, people have died, and this includes a number of people of faith. It didn't save them or rescue them from the virus. So a claim that says it will has not faced the facts. Now, does all of this mean that we throw out hope? Well, one of my favourite theologians, Jürgen Moltmann, he said, "I think I'm an optimist because otherwise I'd be a pessimist." Now, I'm not suggesting that we become pessimists and mope around as if there is no hope. Rather, we might go so far as to say that until we face the facts, we actually have no need for hope. If you're a follower of Jesus, the claim to have hope rests on the acceptance of reality. It says, I believe it can get better, but it's not better now. Hope doesn't make much sense if things aren't bad now. St. Paul, reflecting on this dynamic, says these words, "For in this hope we are saved. A hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have?" Hope is so honest because you only have hope if things aren't right now, meaning you have to face the facts. And when you're honest before God that this is tough, it's not coming together, there's a struggle, a battle, that's when we're lifting our eyes to Him. And from that place, it opens the door to possibility. When we fail to acknowledge the reality, even though we might be spouting off religious platitudes, we can actually avoid turning to God Himself, looking to Him, and our eyes remain firmly fixed on ourselves. The situation to us then just remains unchanged, and we actually miss turning to joy. The joy of Isaac, the birth of this baby boy, was a celebration precisely because it existed on the other side of a time of challenge. He was a child born out of time. We're encouraged then to see Isaac as a sign, not of a wishful thinking type of hope, but a hope grounded in the promises of God. Sarah and Abraham's final laughter at the birth of Isaac was a joyful response to the fruit of a deeper hope that kept them going, looking to God, light through the dark. For joy to be born in our lives, in the here and now, we have to wait beyond wishful thinking. We have to acknowledge our circumstances and our need of God. And when the moment comes, when God honours our waiting beyond hope, we find joy and are able to laugh with Him at what He has done.